All right, what's going on? It's Brad Diaz. What's good? How's it going? What day is today? Friday? Yeah, it's Friday. All right, let's keep it short. Let's keep it sweet. I'm gonna try to make this video shorter than last time, so I'm gonna go, be more concise. All right. So welcome back to the beginner photography guide, beginner photography series, whatever you want to call it. I don't care. Where I try to teach you what I know about photography. If you don't know who I am, I'm a photographer. I do product photography. I do portraits. I do weddings sometimes. Now, not so much. And yeah, I'm just doing my thing. So, guess what we're gonna learn today? Last video we talked about shutter speed, right? Specific stuff about shutter speed that you should know for photography. And the one before that, we explained a bunch of stuff. This one, we're gonna get into aperture. I'm gonna explain that more in depth in, not just explaining what it is, but how you can use it for your photography if you're learning. Okay, two things to keep in mind. Well, first thing that comes to mind is if you're starting out with photography, it does not matter what camera you have. Okay, it does not matter what camera you have. It doesn't matter if it's a DSLR, a mirrorless camera, whatever, right? By the way, it's sunny, so you might see like some overexposed spots, but we don't worry about that. Okay, it doesn't matter what kind of camera you have. It doesn't matter if you have a DSLR, a mirrorless camera, a Canon, Sony, Nikon, Panasonic. I don't even know if Panasonic makes cameras. It doesn't matter, okay? What matters is that you understand the limitations and the capabilities of your camera, all right? What can it do? What can it not do, okay? And you understand the concepts with photography, right? You understand how light works, how aperture works, how your shutter speed works, your settings on your camera. Once you understand that, then, you can consider upgrading your camera. But right now, if you're just learning, don't do that just yet, okay? Enjoy it. Be grateful for what you have, right? All right, so aperture. I'm gonna give you guys a little review before we even get into the tips and stuff that you should keep in mind, things like that. Aperture is pretty much, let me turn on my camera. I don't know why I put it down. Aperture is pretty much what happens in your lens, okay? So let's take a look at my lens real quick. All right, by the way, this is an A7 III, Sony A7 III, with a 35mm f1.8, okay? And I will explain what that means, f1.8, okay? I will explain it for you, okay? So let's look at my camera real quick. I can't tell if you can see it, but you notice that right there? That shrinking hole right there, big enlarging and shrinking in the middle of my lens? That is the aperture, I believe, right? Oh, excuse me. About a burp. Okay, that's the aperture, right? Which is essentially, it's just a hole in the lens that pretty much allows the light to enter into the lens and hit the sensor that is in the camera, okay? And with that sensor, if you listen to the past 2 episodes, whatever, that is how you create images. When light hits your sensor, okay? Images come up, right? Images are created. I'm not gonna scientific stuff, I'm not gonna do that, but that's essentially how it goes. So, good thing to keep in mind, when you have your aperture, or your ring, right? Aperture ring, I'm gonna call it that, the aperture ring. If you have this ring all the way wide open, all right, take a guess what's gonna happen to your photo. Do it right now. Took that photo, take a look. Straight up white. What happens is when your aperture ring is all the way wide open, you get the most amount of light into your lens that the lens can give, right? Because it's all the way open. A lot of light is traveling through the lens and hitting the sensor. Now the opposite can also be true. Let's make our hole very small, f22. Take that photo. All right, take a look. Pretty much everything in the foreground, except for the window, is dark. It's black. That's because very little amounts of light are entering into the camera through the lens because of the small hole. If you can see that right there. Yes, you can. That small hole. Okay? So that's what aperture does, right? Now let me explain the numbers for you. Okay, so in general, and when I'm talking, f-stops and, f1.8, f20, f22, f11, I'm talking about just regular full-frame camera lenses, okay? Cinema lenses, sometimes they go to like T13, T08, stuff like that. That's different. That's like cinematography. They use different numbers. We don't worry about that. We're worried about photography, okay? So, usually, and this is usually in most cameras, right? Our numbers for the f-stop, which is, when you see right here, this is, okay, obviously, cameras different for, things are different for different cameras, but for the Sony camera, right, what you're going to see typically right here, right where it says f1.8 or f whatever number, right, when you see something that says f, that means that it is talking about the aperture. It is talking about how big is that hole in my lens. All right? Now that F number, I'm going to call it f-stop, whatever. I'm probably wrong about the terminology, but we'll just call it an f-stop, okay? The f-stop obviously changes the size of the aperture, the size of our hole in the lens, okay? Now, keep this in mind. The smaller this number is, okay, the wider our hole is going to get, okay? The smaller it is, the wider this hole is going to get, the more light we are letting into the camera. The smaller that number is. The bigger that number is, okay? If we're like near F11, F22, the bigger that number is, the smaller the hole gets. I don't know if I said that right. The lower the number is in front of the F is the bigger that hole gets, okay? Lower number, bigger aperture, more light. Higher number, smaller aperture, less light, okay? Very simple to understand. Now, repeat it to yourself because I forgot this a lot of the time. I didn't really remember it. Now I do because now it's just in the back of my mind always, and it's important to remember. Okay, so if you have a how do you say this? A kit lens, right? So like a lens that comes with your camera when you buy it, from a department store, from Costco, right? Like a T6, Canon T6, or like anything that's a Rebel or an old Nikon camera that you haven't picked up in a while. Okay, those lenses are different to these kinds of lenses, okay? This lens, usually your lenses will have something that says an f1.8, f3.6, f4.5 to f5.6, okay? What that means is that number, what they say, so let's say f1.8. This lens, what that really means is that this lens, the lowest number it can go to is f1.8, right? The lowest. So you see how right here it says f1.8, somewhere right here, or just 1.8? That means the lens can go to an aperture of f1.8. That is the widest it will go. The widest, okay? And this is for prime lenses. I will explain prime lenses in later, but essentially what you need to know about prime lenses are that these are not like zooms, okay? They stay at one focal length and they can only shoot, like, you have to move around with them. But remember, where it says 1.8 or f whatever number, that is the lowest that aperture, the number for the aperture can go. That is the widest our hole in our lens is going to ever get, unless you break it. Then it's as wide as you want. Okay? All right. Now, for zoom lenses, the lenses that go and you get farther and shorter, those lenses, most of the time, or some of the time, those lenses, like a kit lens that comes with your camera when you buy it, at the department store, whatever, those lenses, they will not have, or they will not only say one number. They will not just say 1.8 or f1.8. they will usually say f3.6-f5.6. What does that mean? Why is there a dash? Why isn't there just one number? I'll tell you why. Zoom lenses, especially the cheaper ones, cheaper zoom lenses have this problem, okay? The problem is that when you are trying to zoom with your lens is not able to keep that same aperture. Your lens is not able to have that same, same wideness and allow the same amount of light. Your lens will not do that, okay? I don't know why. You might want to read a manual or look up another video for that. I will not explain it to you scientifically. Just know that when you zoom your lens, and that lens is kind of cheap, it has that, that range, your f-stop is not going to be constant. Your f-stop will change. It will change. So if I'm like f3.6, okay, and I did not move my zoom, I did not zoom in or zoom out with my lens, my f-stop will stay the same as I set it. But, and this is a big but, if I zoom in, I don't know if this is safe for all lenses, but if I zoom in, what's going to happen to my f-stop is that it will increase. It will go from f3.6 to f5.4. My hole, or whatever the hole is in your lens, is going to get smaller. Okay, and that's just how some of these lenses work. All right, there are exceptions. Some lenses that are very expensive, lots of money. Some lenses will, work like my lens. They will only have one number. That will be the lowest aperture that it can go to, and it will not change when you zoom. But that's for some lenses. I have my own lens that does that. It's the Tamron 28 to 75 millimeter, f2.8. See that, f2.8. It does not change when I zoom in or out, and that's because it's a more expensive lens. It's more well made. Okay, it's not as cheap, right? Okay. Now, you might be asking like, well, okay, what else does Aperture do, right? Because if you remember last video, I was talking about shutter speed. Of course, shutter speed, and Aperture, they change the amount of light that is in your photo, okay? But Aperture has its own little kink to it. It has its own little quirk, okay? And that is depth of field. All right. Now this can be huge for you. This could be nothing to you if this, it depends on what you do, right? Depth of field. Okay. Depth of field. Have you ever seen like a photo? A photo where like it's like a person and then everything in the background is blurred out. It's like creamy, everything in the background. That photo has a very small depth of field, okay? The depth of field, essentially for your photo, right, is the focus. It's how much of that photo is in focus, right? How much of that photo is very clear, sharp, how much of that photo can I see clearly, right? So if a person in the photo is sharp and clear, and everything in the background is like, it's like whatever, it's gone, it's creamy, that means that the depth of field is very small because it's only on the person, right? Only the person is in focus. Now, if you look at my video, right, you could see me, you could see my cabinets, you could see that box of cookies over there. The depth of field that I'm getting from my camera, from my phone, right, that depth of field is very big. It's a big depth of field, right? Because you can see everything pretty clearly. Okay, keep that in mind. Okay, what does depth of field have to do with this? Okay, when you go to a lower f-stop, if you go to like f1.8, f2.8, f1.2, f1.4, lenses, they can go even lower than that. f.095, right? But those are very expensive lenses. Keep that in mind. If you go to lower f-stops, what's going to happen is your depth of field is shrinking. Your depth of field will shrink by a lot. It will shrink by a lot, okay? Why does this happen? Don't ask me. I don't really know. But keep that in mind. Your depth of field is shrinking. Now what's gonna happen is that less of your photo will be in focus. Only specific points will be in focus. Okay, and I will show that to you right now. Okay, so let me get this Hawaiian punch right here. Okay, all right. Now let me try to take a photo of it at, let's say f4 or f5.6, like maybe some of your lenses are, right? So let's do f5.6 and just change my settings really quick. Okay. All right, taking that photo from like right here. I'm not gonna move that much from right here. All right, okay. Now let me take that photo at f1.8. You know, change my settings, obviously, do what I gotta do. Okay, and now lastly, I'll take that photo at f11, and we'll take a look. So let me just change my settings, do what I gotta do. Set my ISO to automatic so I don't have to keep changing it. Okay. Now, let's take a look at these photos. I don't know if you can see them that clearly. I'll just try to put them in focus real quick. All right. This photo was at f5.6. Okay, this photo. Let me get in the middle. This photo was at f5.6. All right, it's pretty, like, I don't know if you can really tell that clearly, but it's pretty sharp. It's not terrible. You know, you could still see stuff in the background. It's not like, you know, completely whatever, but it's more, there's a depth of field. The depth of field is pretty great in this photo, right? Now, if we take a look at the next photo. Okay. Oh, buddy. See that? The depth of field is smaller in this photo. The background is, even though you can tell what the background is, it's not as clear. It's not as sharp, right? And I'll just go back one, right? See that? See how the first photo, f5.6, is the coffee machine is a little darker. It's a little more clear. Here, it's a little more blurred out. That's because our depth of field shrunk. It got smaller. Right? Less was in focus. Less of the photo is in focus. Okay? Now, if we go to the next photo, this is at f11. Look at the difference. See how the coffee machine is much more in focus now? f11. Because the depth of field got greater. It was increased. It expanded. Right? So more of the photo is in focus. Okay? So keep in mind, when you're at lower f-stops, apologies, I got a notification. When you're at lower f-stops, your depth of field is getting smaller and smaller, okay? That means less of your photo is in focus, okay? Why would you want that? I'll explain in a bit. If you have a higher f-stop, that means your depth of field is gonna be greater. It will be more. So more of your photo will be in focus. And I'll explain why you would want that as well. Okay? So first thing, why would you want a smaller depth of field? I'll tell you. There's something that I fell in love with when I started with photography and I bought better lenses. And I'm sure a lot of people fall in love with this as well. It's called bokeh. Bokeh. Okay, I say bokeh. Some people say bokeh. Whatever, but it's spelled B-O-K-E-H. Okay, now bokeh is essentially that creamy stuff in the background that you see, you know, like those balls of light, you know, the background just looks creamy. It's beautiful, right? To me, at least, it's beautiful. It's like blurry, it's like fuzzy, it's interesting, right? It's creamy, it draws your attention to a subject, right? That is called bokeh. Everything that's not in focus and has that, you know, color and all that stuff is bokeh. Okay? When you go to lower f-stops, you will get bokeh. You will get cream. You will get beauty behind the subject. Okay? Or in front of the subject. It doesn't matter. It could be either way. Right? As long as your depth of field is getting smaller, you will have more bokeh. Okay, now why would you want to use a high f-stop? Well, that's if you don't want any bokeh. If you want everything to be sharp, clear, perfect, nothing is out of focus, your depth of field is huge, you want everything in the photo to be sharp, clear, consistent, right? You want everything to be spot on, right? That's when you use the higher f-stops. That's when you go to f11, f12. I don't even know if there's f12. f22, right? You go to high f-stops. But also remember what happens to your exposure. Remember what happens to the light that is coming into the camera, okay? I don't have to explain that again. I explained too much of it, okay? So if you want more bokeh, go to lower f-stops. Now, if your lens or if your camera is not giving you the bokeh that you need or that you want or that you crave, you know, some people crave it. I used to. Then that means you have to either... Now, I'll explain this. Okay, there's a little trick. I don't know if I'm really, you know, if it's really a trick or if I'm just a little, or if I'm seeing things. But here's the thing. When you have a lens that doesn't, you know, like you want bokeh, but your lens is not producing it. Okay, here's what I kind of do sometimes. Here's what I used to do a little bit. What I do is I use the lens. I go to as low as an f-stop as I can. So let's say f1.8, right? And I move as close to the subject as I physically can while staying in focus. Okay, so if I go here, right? If I go here, I'll take a photo right there, like this, right? Of the corner of my washing machine or my drying machine. One photo, okay? And then if I go very close, as close as I can to focus on that corner, okay? You're going to see a big difference. Look at this. All right? For the most part, my photo it's kind of fuzzy over here in the corners, but for the most part, it's kind of, you can see everything, right? Now, if I go to the next photo, the one that's closer to the corner, look at that. The stuff in the background, out of focus. It's bokeh. Everything in the background is pretty much bokeh. Only the corner is sharp. I don't know if you can see that clearly. But distance, when you are closer to your subject, right? And you have a shallower, you have a smaller depth of field. What's going to happen is you will create bokeh. You will have more creamy background, you know, whatever you want, right? The creamy background that, you know, you crave, right? If you are farther away, that effect is less. You'll see some bokeh, but it is less. It will be less. So for the people that don't have, you know, the lenses that can go to f1.2, f1.4, f1.8, because those lenses are expensive. The ones that go to f1.8 and f1.4. Or not 1.8. The lenses that go to f1.2 or f1.4. Those lenses cost thousands of dollars. f1.8, it's a little more, you know, affordable. It's still expensive, but it's a little more affordable. Okay? Those lenses, they produce the most bokeh. They produce cream. You can see it in reviews on YouTube. They're beautiful. Okay? But if you do not have that kind of lens, then I just got a notification. If you do not have that kind of lens, you can use this trick and move closer to your subject if you are able to. Okay? That's about it. Pretty much that's it. You know, bokeh, right? That's one of the main things you got to think about when it comes to aperture and trying to get things in focus, right? And I'm not sure what I'll talk about after this. I think I'll talk about the difference between prime lenses and zoom lenses that zoom in and out. I'll tell you the differences. And yeah, that's about it. 25 minutes. All right. If you like the video, be sure to leave a like, leave a comment. If you have any questions, I can help you out. You know, share the video with anyone you want. Any other photographers that are just starting out, or, you know, anyone that's interested in photography, let them know. Let them know, man. I want to keep making these videos. All right. Those are my dogs. I'm not going to eat more cookies. I'm done. All right. I'm not editing this video, by the way. All right. Thank you very much. Subscribe. Do whatever you got to do. Have a good one.